Hi, everybody, and I'm very impressed with this location, with the setting, I have to say. Do you mind if I take my jacket off? No? It's okay? Yeah? Okay, I'll feel a little more comfortable. Okay, thank you. Hi, so Jewish identity, Jewish diversity. Let me just start with, just in 2 or 3 minutes, tell you about my own background, just elaborate a little bit more on what Monica was just saying before. So as you heard, I was born in Israel to parents who immigrated to Israel from Yemen. And so the first home, let me just, briefly, the first home that my parents inhabited, that was, they came in about 1949, 1950. The state was just barely was established, and there were about maybe 600,000 Jews in Israel at that point. The population within about 2 years or so, 2 to 3 years, tripled. Okay, with immigrants coming from all over the world, including my own parents who came from Yemen. A lot of immigrants came from the Middle East, all these Arab countries, Africa, North Africa, basically, and also from Eastern Europe. The first home that my parents inhabited in Israel, imagine, there's so many immigrants coming to a country, there's no housing, Israel was very poor at that point, was actually a transition camp that was made up of, tents. And my mother told me much later that, they lived in a tent with a few other families. And needless to say, my parents being devoutly, religious, could not sleep with each other. And finally, after months, they didn't have privacy, right? After months, the holiday of Sukkot came about. Does anybody know what the holiday of Sukkot is about? It's just, it's about, a holiday that celebrates when the Israelites came out of Egypt and they were in the desert and they had to build, dwellings that were very, was not stable, and they had to build Sukkot. And to this day, Jews, around, after Rosh Hashanah, after the high holidays, build the Sukkah, and so that's when my father decided to build the Sukkah next to the tent. This very temporary, nothing dwelling that if you go, it flows, it just blows up. And for the first time in maybe 5-6 months, my mother told me they were able to sleep without an audience. And guess what? Guess who was born 9 months later? I came about. So, but that camp, transition camp, I don't remember. My parents moved to another transition camp. This time is close to Tel Aviv, north of Tel Aviv. And that's what I remember. And I remember the transition camp that was basically deserted British Army camp base, made out of huts. And every row of huts had 4 different families, and that's what I remember. And that whole transition camp was maybe a square mile. And you have many, many immigrants coming from all these different countries to this 1 square mile. And you would hear so many different languages spoken, because it depends where you came from. My parents spoke Arabic. Other ones German, Polish, whatever. And it was a little strange, although I grew up into this and I thought this is normal. Not only that they spoke different languages, they also were dressed differently from each other. And this is really my first few years until I think I was in 3rd grade, about 8 years old. This was my life. But, let me jump ahead. I just went through the Israeli school system, the army, so on and so forth. And as you heard, I came to New York to study art and photography. But let me start and just, what I do today, I travel around the world. I'm very privileged to take photographs of different Jewish communities around the world. On one hand, I want to show how diverse the Jewish life is, Jewish people are, and you will see it in the photographs. But to me, what was always intriguing is if we are so different, we come from so many different countries, and you have to remember, Jews don't live in a vacuum. They always, live within the society. They take and they give. There's always give and take. So they are influenced by the surrounding. So what connect us anyway in spite of all of this. So let me start right away. I'm going to dim the light. So I hope you don't get too scared. No, this is not the way to go. Can you see? Okay, so I'm going to start with different things, with different images. And I want you to pay attention. And by the way, you can stop me at any moment, although we are a big crowd. And if you want to ask me a question, please feel free to do so. And I'm going to start with just places of prayer or sacred places. So this image is of the Western Wall in Jerusalem. That's all that is left from the Holy Temple, the wall. And this is really the number one place that is holy, but really not much. I mean, it's a little strange that, you have many Jews still to this day going and praying to a wall. Okay? So, if we look at this image, and here we are, and pay attention to the symbols that repeat themselves no matter where we are in the world. This is actually a famous synagogue. It's called Edridge Street Synagogue in New York City, in downtown New York City. And this was actually deserted. The Jewish community most of them moved out of that neighborhood. But since it was a landmark building, they decided to renovate it. And I took this photograph as they were renovating this synagogue. And you can see the symbols, the Star of David, so on and so forth. And here we are in another synagogue yet. And this one is St. Petersburg in Russia. And again, you see, the same kind of symbol, the Star of David, the menorah, the lights, and so on and so forth. This is during morning services. And you can tell this is the Torah, the scroll that Jews read from, usually Monday and Thursday, and also on Saturday, on the Sabbath. So if we continue with that same thing, this is another synagogue. And right now we are in Colombia, the country. And this is during services again. I mean, you see people are kind of kissing this holy scroll. And you can see again, those Star of David again appear. And in the morning, if some of you know, people, men put the tefillin on. And you can see it on their head. Okay, and it contains actually some verses from from the Bible. Any questions so far? Okay, this is another synagogue. And this is, by the way, I took this photograph in 1991. I was privileged to travel to the former Soviet Union, and it was crumbling, actually. It was breaking up because the economy was not working. The whole thing was, but still communism was still, ran supreme. And they had about 15 republics that was under the communist boot, so to speak. And this photograph I actually took in Riga, the capital of Latvia, one of the Baltic states. And when I came to the synagogue, this was the only synagogue that was left in Latvia, in Riga. Because, and you have to understand, Jewish life was thriving before the war, before WW2. But what happened, whatever the Nazis did not destroy of any Jewish, life and synagogues or places of study, the communists made sure that it would be also gone. The only thing is the communists wanted to show, well, we're not really against religion. And look, there is a synagogue there. The only thing is, this is the only synagogue. Everything was destroyed. And if you would have gone during communist time to a synagogue, or for that matter, also sometimes for a church, it was very discouraging. So you'd only find in synagogues a few, the elderly. You would hardly find any young people going because they would be intimidated by the KGB, the secret police. So I go to the synagogue and I'm like seeing this man, who you see there, and he's the gabbai who is like basically the caretaker of the synagogue. And like to my amazement, I'm looking at this big, nice synagogue actually, and there's hardly any books. And I'm like asking through a translator. I don't speak Russian, but I had an assistant, and I said, "Can you ask him how come we don't have books here? Hardly any, very few." And he got insulted, and I didn't mean to insult him. So he said to my assistant, "You want to show, see books? I'll show you books." And he took us to the attic. And as soon as I went into the attic, I mean, he wanted to show off and to show me that he has also the very, very old books and very dear books and so on and so forth. And I, saw this image and I just immediately put a wide-angle lens to take this kind of photographs. And what it turns out, the reason why the books were all in the attic is because the communists. If I ask you, when you see lots of books, what does that mean? What does it show? It shows the richness of a culture. And that's not what the communists wanted to show. So they were kind of forced to put them up, and this is like decades of neglect, by the way. And here we are, another synagogue yet. I actually, the title for this, is Waiting for 7 Jews. Does anybody know why Waiting for 7 Jews? Go ahead, you were going.
There has to be 7 in order to perform.
Right, they need another 7 to perform, to say certain prayers. You need, for a quorum, you need 10 people in Jewish law. So this is just. Anyway, this synagogue is in Tunisia. We've heard of Tunisia quite a bit lately, right? And this is in the island of Jerba. There is still to this day about 1,500, 2,000 Jews left. They believe, according to their tradition, they built this synagogue with a stone that they carried from the destruction of the Second Temple. This same synagogue was, Al-Qaeda tried to blow it up about 8 years ago, something like that, give or take. And the only thing they managed to do is to kill 17 German tourists in the yard. Whatever they had, I think there were gas canisters, blew up in the yard and did not damage the synagogue. So, here we're in another synagogue, actually in the Bronx, in New York City. And this is immediately after morning services. And they're just studying after. And you see the replica actually of the wall. You can see it on on top. This is the replica of the Western Wall, the photograph that we started very early with. Okay? And here we are, another synagogue. Can you see what's written on their, T-shirts? Go ahead, say it loud.
Navy States Air Force?
Yes, Air Force Academy. And where is that? In
Colorado.
Colorado Springs, right? And this is actually in the synagogue, the chapel in the base. This is, soldiers actually in basic training. And it is Friday night services. And I have to tell you that really most of them are not exactly very religious. But when you're basic training, as you probably know, it's really, really tough. I mean, you don't have a moment of rest. You're being yelled at, and you have to run and jump, whatever, at every given moment. So if you have a chance to go and just go to services and just relax and have a little wine and so on and so forth, it's much better. So everybody appears, obviously. So this is, and you can see the attitude of, soldiers are soldiers. They need to look macho and so on and so forth. So look at these soldiers, and look at these soldiers. These are Israeli soldiers. These are paratroopers. You can tell by red boots. You can see it right here in this one. But they are actually moments before swearing allegiance to the state, to the country. This is immediately after they've done with the basic training. And they have, what do you say? No, this depends what unit, you are in. The paratroopers go to the war. They're about to go march into that first photograph that I showed you, that, promenade. But some soldiers go to Masada to do the swearing in. Depends which unit you are. So again, the attitude, it doesn't matter if you're a soldier in any place. And as I'm sure you know, you don't always need an enclosed space to pray, right? You can do it outside, in the open. And this is a photograph in Israel, in the desert. And at sunrise, And there is actually one of the commandments, actually biblical commandment, that to say the Shema Israel, some verses, it's at sunrise. Some people, do it at sunrise, but you have to do it in the morning, basically. So, and again, here we are in another place. I mean, this is obviously outdoor, and this is in the flea market in Tel Aviv, Yafo. And what happened, very funny, I mean, I was just very lucky to be at the right place at the right time. The vendors, it comes 12 o'clock, and it's time to, there's like 3 prayers in Judaism. One is in the morning, Shachrit. There's another one, Mincha, it's in the afternoon, and Mariv is at night. So this one is in the afternoon. And they just know if you want to play in a quorum of 10, then they come together and all the vendors come in, and right outside of the shop they just do that. So I'm going to switch from synagogues. I'm still in a synagogue, but different thing that synagogues are there to do. This is actually a homeless man in New York City coming out of a synagogue that is actually being used as a soup kitchen. Okay? Again, you can see the Star of David and so on. This is on, you want to know, it's on 23rd Street and 8th Avenue, if someone knows or had been to New York City. Any questions so far, guys? No. Okay. Either I'm very clear and so good at this presentation, or you just don't understand anything, or you don't understand anything I'm saying. Okay, so let's go. I mean, we are still talking about poverty, social action, and so on and so forth. And here we are in Argentina, actually. About 10 years ago or so, I don't know if some of you recall, there was a big, major economic downturn in the country, and there were like tens and tens of soup kitchens across Buenos Aires, and not only Buenos Aires. So this is in Buenos Aires, and you see people actually waiting in line to go into the synagogue to eat, it's a soup kitchen as well. Okay? And while we're still with poverty and so on, this is another place, actually inside, I mean, it's the yard of a synagogue in Uzbekistan, in a place, in a city called Samarkand. Again, and by the way, I mean, I don't know that you need to ask, but everything I show you is of Jews in different places, okay? And you can see the faces don't always, you'll see later also how, and by the way, I'm going to ask you a question at the end of this presentation. I want you to think of, what is a Jewish face? Do you see something that characterizes Jewish faces through this, or this is just all over the place? Anyway, so this guy is actually, sitting, and next to him, this is a box, a charity box. The people, you see, they can put some money that is being used to give to poor people. And it says on it, tzedakah, gemilut chasadim. Tzedakah in Hebrew means,
Charity.
say that?
Charity.
Charity, but also tzedek in Hebrew means justice. Okay, so it's the same root. In other words, when you are giving to charity, you're actually doing what? Justice. Okay? That in Judeo-Christian values, this is what charity comes from, and that's what it really means. You're doing justice. You're not doing a favor to anyone else. This is what you're supposed to do. So this is in Samarkand. And we're going to another place yet. Again, it's a poor lady in Kiev, the Ukraine. Okay, I photographed her in her kitchen. And I just like the play of light and the way she looks and this whole thing, and you can see how I composed it to kind of drive my message or whatever I wanted to show in this photograph. I don't have to tell you, I mean, but the place was infested with, it was really horrible. We're going into something else altogether now, and this is, anybody want to guess what we're looking at? I can't hear you guys. So, a tombstone, right? And what do you think this engraving on the tombstone. This is, by the way, in Romania, in Bucharest. Not Bucharest, sorry, but it's in a town outside of the capital. And why the hands? Good, because the man that was buried there is a priest. Okay, not that he functioned as a priest any longer, but during the times of the Holy Temple, when you would have the Holy Temple and you'd have sacrifices and so on and so forth, you know, but one of the tasks that the priest has to do and perform, that they were actually commanded to do, is to bless the people of Israel. And to this day, on certain holidays and certain prayers, they have to do the blessing, the priest. I mean, and you know, by the way, you know, people know from generation to generation, from father to son to daughter, whatever, is, oh, by the way, you are either a Kohen, a priest, from that family back then, from that tribe, or a Levite, which, by the way, I am, according to my father and grandfather and so on, which is the same tribe that Moses came from, but also his brother Aaron, who was the first priest in Jewish law. And the rest of the Jews are like Israel, which just means basically from all the different tribes. So the hands actually means what they do when they bless the people of Israel. They do it under the talit, which is the what we wear, you know, people wear during prayer, and they go with the hands like this, and they have to recite a very specific prayer from the Bible. So you know, so okay, anyway, so this is, and you see the Star of David, but this is in Romania. Look at this photograph. Same hand, a little more modern. And where is that? Sheboygan. Okay? You know where Sheboygan is? Wisconsin, right? So this is, and you see it, that's what I'm trying to, you know, drive in. You know, it's the same motifs. It's different, but yet there is connection. Connection to the book, connection to the Bible, connection to tradition, in different clothing sometimes. But, okay? And here we are, actually in also a cemetery, again, another headstone. And this headstone was actually vandalized. My caption, by the way, for this photograph is "Rest in Pieces." Okay? This is in Buenos Aires. And I have to just tell you an anecdote, I really do. A friend of mine, he's an author, non-author actually, Danny Gordis, you know who he is, has this photograph actually at his home. He lives in Jerusalem. He's an American who moved to Jerusalem. He actually was teaching at American Jewish University. He was the dean a while back. Now lives in, you know, in Israel or so. And he has this on the wall, at his wall, because he has a few of my photographs. And he has still this Arab man, Muslim, who would come and, you know, fix her upper. And one day, my friend told me, you know, they said to me, he comes and he looks at this image, and he looks and looks, and my friend said to him, yeah. And he said, look, I don't get it. Why would someone break this? You know, I mean, what happened? He tells him, okay, this is like someone vandalized people who are anti-Semites or whatever. And this Muslim guy says, I don't get it. They hate dead Jews too? That was his reaction. Anyway, they do. So you see, I mean, the poor old woman, you know, you see her face is engraved here with the Star of David, you know, and she actually lived until old age because it says Haskena, the elderly, you know, whatever. So that's in one of the main cemeteries in Buenos Aires. I'm sorry I'm jumping around this globe, but anybody recognize this? Give you a hint. North Africa, Morocco, Fez. By the way, if you ever travel, Morocco is fascinating, it's beautiful, the food is good, and Fez is beyond amazing. What? Yes, well, that's some people who go to, you know, cherish the, you know. Anyway, so this is in Fez, and this is the caretaker of that Jewish cemetery there. And he has, I don't know if you can see that he has keys, that he's like, you know, he actually lives right, you know, in the cemetery taking care of it. We're going to something a little happier, thank God. This is actually a Yemenite bride. This is not in Yemen. I'll show you a photo from Yemen, but this is not. This is actually in Israel already. The culture, a lot of what people brought from anything, wherever they came to the world, you see after a while they kind of lose it. They cannot keep everything. They cannot preserve everything. It's like in this country also. I mean, the first generation tries to keep stuff, and then it gets diluted, and you lose interest. And the next and third generation, intermarry, goes with, and they lose it. But this is still being kept by a lot of Yemenite brides. And you rent this outfit. This is what a bride wears for her wedding. It's very elaborate. It's all made out of silver and gold and this, but nobody can afford it, so you have to rent it for the day. And see, this woman is like kind of fixing her up. This is another wedding. This actually, I'm back in Buenos Aires. And you can see they have a custom in that community to actually write, the bride and the groom write their names and so on in the book of the community book. Okay, that's in Libertad Synagogue, a known synagogue in Buenos Aires. And here we are in India, in Mumbai. Mumbai. Again, and you can see that this man is actually, here's the groom, here's the bride, that's the bridesmaid, and then, you read the ketubah. Ketubah is the ancient, so to speak, but still being maintained today. It's like really the contract, between the man and the woman. And so this is in India. The funny thing I have to tell you, they're talking about, diversity among Jews, and you can see that, I don't know, can you see that there's a little difference how people look and colors and everything else? In India, mind you, it was very fascinating. I've been there a couple of times. So you would think, there's like more than 1 billion people living in India today, and the number is growing on a daily basis. And among these billions of people, you have altogether maybe 5,000 Jews. So we're really, really talking about not even a drop in the bucket. So you would think to yourself, right, that this 5,000 Jews who live in India in a few little towns, but most of them in Mumbai, would be homogeneous, right? Makes sense, no? A very small community. But no, it is not. There's actually 4 different groups in India among those 5,000. The largest one is called Bet Israel. This is what you see here. And according to their tradition, they were shipwrecked 2,000 years ago. And they just got stuck there and stayed. Then you have the Cochini Jews in the south. There's maybe 50 of them today. They claim that they came from Spain after the Inquisition in 1492. But very few of them. Most of them immigrated to Israel. And then you have the Baghdadi Jews. These are merchants that came from Baghdad, Iraq, most of them via England, and somehow found themselves doing business in India. I think you can count them on one hand, basically today. And the 4th group that just came out of the woodworks just recently is actually from northeast India, and they claim, they call themselves Bnei Menashe, the children of Manasseh, the tribe Manasseh, and they think that they have been one of the lost tribes of Israel, and they're now coming back into the fold. Okay, I may have a photograph of them later. You'll see the different, the faces and so on, and you can see that, how different we are. This is another wedding in the south of France, in Marseille. Okay, and you can see the chuppah with the talit and so on, and you can really basically see it in a lot of different places, any place in the world. So from weddings, we are going now to actually births. And this is actually a circumcision ceremony in Mexico City. Okay? And you make a blessing over the wine, and a certain other blessing, including Shehayanu and so on. There's a whole different thing that you do. This is immediately after the circumcision itself. The baby is very happy, and they also, you see with the finger, they even put, some wine into, they drink a little bit of wine. So it's alleviate the pain, and, wine is, as they say, samach levav enosh, we drink wine, we get happy a little bit. So it's actually in the Bible. Yain is samach levav enosh. Wine would make happy the heart of a person. I don't know, we'll try it. Okay, so this is in Mexico City. And here we are, and this is something I have not seen any place in the world, except in this city. What happened was actually, I was in one of my trips to Uzbekistan, and there is a group that call themselves the Bukharan Jews in Uzbekistan. And actually, starting in the 90s, once the Soviet Union was breaking up and people were allowed or could leave, because up to that point you could not leave, all the republics that are under the communist regime. So once that the doors were open, Jews among other people were, leaving, either leaving to Israel or leaving to New York or what have you. So here I am in Bukhara. This is the first time, actually, I think it was 93, if I'm not mistaken. I went another 5 times later on because I did the whole exhibit on that Jewish community because I realized they're going to disappear, they're leaving. And they're not going to maintain all their customs and tradition, and they're very, very unique and also exotic. So I said, I have to do this. So anyway, so here I am, this is the first trip. And I'm told, why don't you come to the synagogue to pray? I said, hey, cool, sounds nice. So I said, okay, so what time is this prayer, service starting? And they tell me 5 in the morning. And I said, wait, 5 in the morning, it's a little too early for anybody, right? And, and I'm staying in a hotel, and just the thought, I just came the day before from the United States, I'm jet lagged, I'm dead tired, and to get up like 4:30 to be in the synagogue for prayer at 5 o'clock sounds a little too much. And I was thinking, I said, you know what, I'm not here every day. I better, get my ass and go and do that. So that's what I did, and I was really, but then, you know what, I got rewarded. As soon as, services were over around 6 o'clock, they told me, hey, you know what, there's actually going to be a circumcision ceremony. Everybody, the whole community is going to come, and it's going to be fun, and there's going to be food, stay. So I said, it's an opportunity, obviously, and I stayed, and I was very lucky because this is a custom that I have not seen any place, a tradition only in that community. And what happened is, you can see the baby's feet protruding out, right? Can you see it? What happened right before the circumcision, this community decide, or like what they do, this, you see the woman who's sitting with their hands like this, what they do, they pour some water over the baby's feet, and then it hits her hand, and she makes a blessing, blesses the kid, the baby, and then they took it to be circumcised. I thought it was like really different, and what I like about it, that women are part of the ceremony as well. So you see, everybody's a little worried because circumcision is like always gets you a little bit, By the way, if you will have an opportunity to go to a circumcision ceremony, by the way, it's not that how do you call it? It's really the baby cry in 2 seconds. It's not that traumatic, by the way. But pay attention to the men. The men who are standing right nearby, they usually do not stand like this, they would stand like this. It's just automatic, I'm telling you, I have taken photographs, I'm like, I don't know whether I should focus on the circumcision or like on the men, protecting themselves. So anyway, so here we are in Bukhara in Uzbekistan. Go forward. Look at this image. I'm going to show it to you. Look at this image. Okay? This is an image of children about 3 years old, because at 3 years old, by the way, the ultra, Orthodox Jews do not cut the hair of their, boys until they're 3. When they're 3 exactly, they come and they shave their head, and they leave the side, side locks, as you can see, and they start reading. They start reading the Hebrew alphabet. Okay, and you can see the alphabet. You see how they're reading? This is actually, I took this in Brooklyn, New York, in Williamsburg. This is a Hasidic sect called Satmar. It's a big sect of Hasidim, originating from Hungary, right? But now they live, most of them live in Williamsburg and some of them in Israel. And pay attention. So this is New York City now. Look at this image. Yemen. You see the similarity? Okay, this is like thousands and thousands of miles away. I mean, this is like in a place in Yemen, in a village. By the way, no more Jews in that village. Most of the Jews left, fled, threatened. Some of them killed, and they left Yemen. This is like whatever was left in Yemen after the big mass immigration that my parents were part of in 1949, 1950. So I was privileged, by the way, and I was able to travel to Yemen because I could never go to Yemen. Because now it's altogether insanity, but when I went there the first time in 1992, and then 1993, it was, you could still go, but it was always dangerous, especially if you're not Muslim. Today, even if you're Muslim, depends what tribe you come from, but that's another story. But if you are, think about it, if you're American, which I have an American citizenship, Israeli, Jewish, I mean, this is trifecta for them, you know, so it's not a good idea. And so anyway, but I was able to go, you know, just, how much time do we have, by the way? Are you bored yet? Are you sleeping? I mean, this dark, I can't tell, you know. So anyway, so when I wanted to go to Yemen for the first time, I already did a lot of, you know, photography on Yemenite Jews in Israel, but I wanted to go to Yemen to really explore and see where my parents came from. What was unique about that generation that is about to die out? Because if you look at me and you look at my father, late my father, you can, you know, you'll see later, you know, like the difference. But it's not only the way we look, it's the way we think. I'm more Western, Israeli, American, came from Yemen. Believe me, it's very different. And so I went to ask for a visa, actually, at the embassy in Washington, D.C., from the Yemenite. And I go with my, both, you know, with both of my passports. I have two, one Israeli, one American. And the ambassador is looking at me, and we had, you know, he knew already that I was very interested, and that's where I came from, and I'm, you know, journalist, whatever. And he was telling me something very funny. He said, you know, we really miss the Jews. And I was looked at him, and I didn't want to say, you know, that sounds like bullshit, but okay. I mean, they did, because a lot of the skilled work that, you know, came when Jews forced to leave. A lot of the skilled work went out with them, like, you know, jewelry making and blacksmiths and so on, which my father, by the way, was. And anyway, he looks at my passport and says, oh, hey, listen, I have an, you know, American passport. This is what I'm going to travel with. And he looks at it and he said, well, but it says that you're born in Israel. This doesn't look good for us. We have to hide it somewhere. I said, what do you want to do? And he said, no, you have to do something, otherwise you can't, I'm not going to give you a visa. So I went back to the, actually there was back then in Rockefeller Center in New York City, there was a immigration office, a visa, you know, you can get a passport office, sorry. And I went to the clerk, it was a big deal, it's no longer there. And I said, look, you know, I brought my birth certificate from Israel. And I said, look, you see, I was born in Hadera, that's the town where I was born. And, you know, can you change, instead of born Israel, can you write born Hadera? Because Hadera seems more obscure. I mean, not too many people know Hadera. And I can fake it, and I can say, oh, Hadera is in Kansas, or whatever. So the clerk looks at me and says, what are you crazy? I mean, we don't put towns and cities, you know, this is, you know, it's countries. I said, you don't understand, you know, I need to travel to, anyway, he's not listening to me. After 10 minutes or so, me trying, I said to him, listen, I need to speak to your supervisor. Supervisor, come. My luck, Jewish. And I said to him, look, you know, I'm Israeli, I'm Jewish, I'm all this thing. In Yemen, they're going to kill me before, you know, so do me a favor, just change it. He did. So this is how I was able to travel to. Anyway, let's go on. So you see, you know, another photograph of like, I want to just show you again similarities and differences like I showed you before. Look, you know, okay? The faces changes, but basically, you know, it's the same motifs, traditions. You know, this is in Morocco, Casablanca. Okay? And this is like actually benching or like, you know, making the, you know, prayers immediately after you eat, after lunchtime. He's missing a couple of teeth, but he's able to talk and say it. And this is actually in Baltimore. You see, morning services in a day school, Jewish day school in Baltimore, saying kind of things. Look at this image. This guy is not as nasty as he looks, although he has this blade in his mouth. But he is about to perform slaughtering of a chicken, by the way. You know, this is in Yemen. And, you know, so while he's holding and managing or whatever the poor chicken, he's, you know, it's putting this blade knife, which is had to be, by the way, very, very sharp. It has to be checked every time, because the idea of, by the way, slaughtering Jewishly, you may know already, but the idea is to cause the least pain to the animal. So the knife has to be the sharpest, and you have to go through a whole course and study the whole, you know, rules and laws. I mean, it's not so simple how to do it so you cause much less pain, and also what makes it kosher and not kosher. I'm not going to go into it. I don't know everything myself, but this is part of, you know, that's really the original idea. And so look at it. This is in Yemen. You see the sidewalk and everything. Look at this image. Same thing. Yemen, Uzbekistan. This is in Uzbekistan. But in here you can see the poor chicken. Doesn't know what they're expecting here, but she's, you know, kind of apprehensive of the future. It's actually short-lived. Okay. So, so far so good. Got it? Yes? All right, good. So here we are where something else now. We had, you know, kosher slaughterers. Now we are talking about scribes. Scribes are people who write the scrolls, the Torah scrolls. It has to be, as you know, on parchment that's made out of mostly, you know, cow's skin. And here we are actually in India, in Mumbai. He's fixing one. He's not making it, but he's fixing, because you cannot have, it has to be perfect. All the letters have to be perfect, otherwise you cannot read from the Torah. If you have just even a little bit of a fraction or something that does not connect in a letter, you got to fix it. Otherwise you cannot read for it. Okay, so that's what he's doing. And there's another one in the south of France. Same thing, he's actually writing one. Okay? So, south of France, India, Berkeley, you know where Berkeley is, right? Not too far from here. This is a woman actually writing, you know, a Torah scroll, and I decided to take a photograph. Obviously, I was in the house taking photographs, and then I thought, oh, photographically it's a little boring, so I decided to actually take a photograph from outside through the window, and I thought just the image would be a little bit more interesting. And I almost got beaten by the dog. That was nasty, but you know, that's sometimes what it takes to take a photograph. And that was a really nasty German Shepherd. You know, he could not stop barking. And anyway, so that's a woman actually writing Torah in Berkeley. She actually had an exhibit in the new contemporary Jewish museum in San Francisco, where every day she would come and write something and explain how it was, you know, how do you write it and so on and so forth. Okay, guys, so we're moving. I just want to show you different Jews in different places, you know, just, you know, families or so. This is actually a photograph that I took in Cuba, not a few years ago. This woman is Jewish. She married a non-Jew who converted. I mean, this is machete. Yeah, they're flower growers. They sell the flowers in the market. This is the machete that they just came back from the field. That's his father. This is their children. So this is in Cuba, in a place called Camagüey. You ever go to Cuba? Another photograph. Remember, I told you about Bnei Israel, this people, the tribe that claimed that they were shipwrecked 2,000 years ago. This is them. They were basically, you know, oil pressers. They were traditionally doing, and you can just photograph in front of their house, and you can see the Star of David a little bit, you know, tilted there, and also there is a hand. Actually, you can't see it, but it's in red. And that read, I don't know, to whoever knows and read the Bible, actually there's one of the plagues and the children of Israel, that happened to Pharaoh, but if you didn't want to be, hit, you needed to put some blood from whatever on the doorstep, but we won't get into it right now. So this is in a place called Alibag. Okay, it's a village, it's this very, very small Jewish community that's still left there. And here we are. Anybody want to guess where we are? Okay, so this is, yes, anyone?
Beverly Hills.
Go ahead.
Beverly Hills, California.
I can't hear you.
Beverly Hills, California.
Beverly Hills. Perfect. This is in, you just failed geography. This is actually in Iquitos in Peru. Yeah. Okay? So, Iquitos, Peru, if you're going to go to Machu Picchu, this is from, this is like not too far from there, so, and actually this is very funny. You can see the Star of David, and in Hebrew it says Bet Levi, the house of Levi. That's their last name. And this is, again, it's like just interesting. About 100, the story goes like this. About 100 years ago or so, these Jews men from Morocco, they were merchant with the rubber in the rubber industry, and they needed to go to the Amazon, right? To get rubber, whatever, and they just stayed and married indigenous women. And this is like what, 4th generation later, you can see the transition, the way they look and everything. But they know that they originate from they're Jewish, or at least their ancestry 4 or 5 generations ago had been Jewish. So they still keep they write in Hebrew, and they see. So this is in Iquitos, and here we are. I don't know if you knew, but there are some Jewish cowboys. Did you know that? I didn't know that either until I went to Argentina. And it turns out, this is a little more than 100 years ago, there were actually, poverty was really, Eastern Europe was stricken, it was very, very poor. And the Jews were very poor, and they couldn't make a living, they couldn't even, have, basics, starving and so on. So there was this Jewish guy, he obviously had a couple of dollars to him, called Baron Hirsch, and he said, look guys, I'm going to buy land in Argentina. They're in Eastern Europe, remember, okay? I'm going to buy land in Argentina. It always rains there. You are going to become farmers. It's not going to be so difficult because it's always raining and things and so on. You can grow, cows or whatever. You can become cowboys and also, so that's what, so you go to this day. I mean, most of these little communities actually have, moved to the big cities. This is already, but there are a few Jewish cowboys still there. Okay, so this is a photograph I took actually 9 years ago. There's places like Moisesville, Concordia, Basavilbaso. These are small settlements that still exist to this day. So that's that. This is a photograph that I took, remember, in Yemen. And the title for this photograph is Balancing. And there's a little story I'll tell you very fast. Again, this is my first trip to Yemen. And, I went all the way to the north. I was looking for Jewish families, whatever, just showing Jewish life. And I heard about this, very, very small Jewish community in a remote village, which was 5 hours drive from this remote town that I was already in. And this remote town that I was already in did not have a hotel or anything. It was just like this, not even a motel, whatever. So I tell because once you get to Yemen, you're assigned, the government assigns someone to go with you to be your guide. But you know that this guide is also, you have to be careful what you say because he's also reporting everything you say to the government. So anyways, I tell him, listen guy, I heard about this little, few families who live up in nowhere, and I want to go photograph them. He looks at me, he obviously was like not in the mood, because it's about 5 hours drive there. And he said, no, it's not. I said to him, listen, I want to go. I'm paying your salary, I want to go. And he said, but there's no place to sleep. I said, we have to come back the same day. I said, there's no way in hell I'm driving 5 hours into the mountains for 1 hour and coming back. He said, we're going to sleep there. Okay, we'll find somewhere. Anyway, we go to this village, and as soon as we come in, the sheik of the place, like attaches to us a couple of bodyguards, which I was not crazy about. They're always, machine guns and everything. And you say to yourself, you know what, just don't kill me and don't protect me, but okay. So at the end of the day, we need to go to sleep. And here we are in this family home, and all they have is about maybe 10 by 10. This was their living room, and there's no mattresses, nothing. We just sleep on the floor. But I was that tired, and I said, okay, what the hell? And then what happened, it's the funny thing is, I'm very light sleeper, or I'm very sensitive to noise. Before I know it, I was not alone. There's another 4 men sitting next to me, and 2 of them are snoring, like crazy. And I can't sleep. This guy that was next to me is actually snoring so bad, he starts slow, and then the pitch goes up, and then he wakes himself up, and stops. And I said, oh, good, thank you. Before I know it, he starts again, the whole night. So I said, okay, the hell with this, I'm not sleeping. I got up at about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I just sat on the roof and waited for the morning to come up. And this is where I was rewarded again. This photograph, this guy coming out of nowhere, and he's actually a jeweler holding a silver, and you can see that he's Jewish because of sidebars, right? And this is one of my better known photographs, actually. And why I'm calling it balancing, because if you are non-Muslim in a Muslim country, there's a lot of balancing you have to do. It's not only the fact that he's kind of balancing on the side and actually stretching a wire, silver wire, but you have to watch out what you say and how you behave and so on and so forth. I don't want to get into it right now. I'm just, showing you a few. This is in Israel now, a few series of families in Israel. We're almost done, guys. This is a photograph of, I just wanted to show you what Israel is made of. And so I decided about 4 years ago to do an exhibit on the diversity of families in Israel. So this is a family actually that originated from India. Okay? This is a family that originated in Yemen. This is just recent, by the way, a few years ago. Okay? This is the family, and you can see the difference that they don't look the same. Okay, but this is from Dagestan. Okay, it's usually a few generations. This is from Uzbekistan, all in Israel. Yes. This is from Germany, up in the north in a kibbutz, and this is your average American family living in Tel Aviv. Okay, that's also immigrants from the USA. Okay, this is a beach in Tel Aviv, and this is sometimes you find these Ethiopian men with a woman from Russia, and the product is with them. So that's up in the north, actually. So, okay. And okay, now remember I asked you, I'm about to finish with my presentation, guys. I just wanted to pay attention, and if anyone can tell me what the Jewish face is there a certain characteristic that, puts it all together, I'll be very happy. This is a farmer. Okay, in Israel. And this is a ranger in Acadia National Park. Right? In Maine, right? That's what it is, right? Last time I checked. This is a woman. Afghanistan. India. All Jewish. This is an immigrant actually from the Ukraine in Israel. I think it was his first watermelon. This is another kid, with Israeli flag, Ethiopian kid. This is in Lithuania. This is in Bukhara, Uzbekistan. And I'm going to conclude with a photograph of my father, my late father. So I just wanted to kind of set the point. Obviously, it's very hard for me to connect with all of you because we're a big crowd, but there's no real Jewish face. We're mixed.